The ASUS Z170A comes in ASUS's typical retail packaging for motherboards. They really haven't changed much around compared to Z97. It looks pretty much the same. As you can guess, they've kept the same naming as well. So we did review the Z97A, and now we have the Z170A. Again, these are entry-level motherboards for the respective chipsets. So on the front, it just lets us know that it is a Z170A, and it highlights the 5-way optimization and USB 3.1. Has a picture of the board right here. It also lets us know you get a premium, looks like you get a premium ship and a 15-day premium account to World of Warships, which is kind of nice. So you get a little value add-on with the board. On the back, it's just going to go into detail on all of the information, all the features, and give you a full overview of the board. So again, if you are at the store, you can get some information on the board before you go ahead and buy it. Let's open this up and see what we have. So as you can see, we have the board first, nicely protected. Oops. And an anti-static bag right there. So we'll get that out, and of course we'll take a look at that second, and we'll take a look at the accessories. So I can get this out of here carefully. Move that out of the way, and we'll take a look at our accessories. So we have an I/O shield, and again, this is entry level, so nothing special on this I/O shield. It's not even painted, just the typical silver I/O shield. I would have liked to see at least this be black or something like that. This is really kind of bare bones. Not a huge fan of that. We have our drivers and utility CD. As I always say, if you're buying these motherboards, go to the manufacturer's website and get the latest drivers, because these are probably outdated. So move that out of the way. We have a SLI bridge right here. We have our Q connectors, and it looks like we only have a Q connector here for our front panel connections. There's not one for USB or anything like that. So what the Q connector does is it allows you to connect all of your front panel connections to this, and then simply connect this to the headers on the board. It just makes it so much easier. It's one of my favorite features of ASUS motherboards that's been around for years now, and it's just one of my favorite things. It just makes it easier, especially if you're a first-time builder. We have 2 bags of SATA cables, a total of 3. So you have 1 SATA cable here in a bag, and then only 2 more here. So only 3. We typically see 4. Again, this is turning out to be very bare bones as far as accessories go. We have the CPU installation tool. So this is something new that ASUS has done with their Z170 motherboards. We actually talked about it on the site last week or the week before that. It's going to make it so much easier to install a Skylake CPU in the LGA 1151 socket. I'm not going to open it up, but I will go over the installation in our full review of this motherboard. It's a new thing. This helps it so you don't bend your pins or mess up anything like that, especially if you're a first-time builder. So they have included that. We have a little screw for the M.2. If you're going to install an M.2 device, here are the screws to lock it in. And we have our user's guide, and that is it for our accessories. So taking a first look at the board, we can see that ASUS has gone with the white and black color design. This is a follow-through from their X99 motherboards. We saw it on a lot of those boards, so they're following it through here. So you pretty much have an all-black PCB, and then we have the coverage here of your I/O ports in white, as well as white on the PCH heatsink. Starting at the center of the board, we have Intel's LGA 1151 socket, and that is made for Intel's brand new Skylake processors. Right around there, we have our power delivery components, and ASUS makes use of their DigiPlus VRM all digital power design. You can see that ASUS has actually gone with these silver metallic heat sinks instead of the normal black ones that we saw on the prototypes of this board. So we do have that little different color contrast in there. Up here we have an 8-pin EPS connector. Way up top, the white connector is your a 4-pin CPU fan connector, and you also have a secondary CPU optional fan connector here in the black. Moving over to the side of the board, we have 4 DDR4 DIMM slots, and this supports dual channel DDR4 memory up to 3400 megahertz. Way up top here in the corner, we have another 4-pin fan connector. You have your 24-pin ATX power connector, and then we have a USB 3.0 header. Moving down, we have our storage connections. So you have your SATA Express port right here, and 4 SATA 6 gig ports, and one is actually labeled as your OS drive. That's going to actually help a lot of first time users who are not really sure where to plug things in, so they have that labeled here. And remember, if you're not going to make use of the SATA Express port, that actually opens up 2 more SATA ports. The board also has an M.2 slot right here, and this is PCI Express 3.0 X4 slot, so you're going to get a lot of speed out of that, and it actually supports all the way up to the 22110 specification, so you can fit some very long M.2 SSDs in there. Along the bottom of the board is where you're going to find the rest of your switches, buttons, and headers. So starting right here, you have your TPU switch. You have your front panel connections, and that's what you're going to use with that included Q connector. You have your Easy XMP switch, 4-pin fan header, external fan header, USB 3.0 header, 2 USB 2.0 headers, your Thunderbolt header, TPM header, power switch, COM port, and your HD audio connections. This board makes use of ASUS's Crystal Sound 3 audio solution, and that's going to give you clean and clear sound for all of your gaming needs as well as pretty much everything else. It has full PCB isolation, which you can kind of see right here. And ASUS has done that on their last few generations of motherboards. You also have EMI protection, audio shielding, and the PCB layers. There's actually a separate PCB layer for the left and right channel. As far as expansion slots go, you have 1, 2, 3 PCI Express 3.0 X16 slots. You have 1, 2, 3 PCI Express X1 slots, and you have a legacy PCI slot right here. Now, the way the X16 slots will work is this slot will always run at X16 speeds. If you have 2 cards installed, they will run at X8 speeds, and then this bottom one will always run at X4 speed. Above the top PCI Express X1 slot, you have 2 more 4-pin fan headers. So that gives you a total of 4 4-pin fan headers, not including your CPU and CPU optional fan header. Remember, all of these headers can be controlled within the BIOS, and they support PWM mode as well as DC mode, so you can select your fans however you want. There's also a white labeled header right here, and this is actually not for a fan. This is to connect the pump for your all-in-one water cooling unit. Now, what's the point of this? Why would ASUS put that on there? Well, for one, a lot of all-in-one water cooling units don't give you the ability within their software to actually speed up the pump if you want to. And if you speed up the pump, you're going to get better performance. Some do, some don't. So what ASUS did was they put a dedicated header right there for your pump. So normally we connect it to the CPU fan header, but this you connect it to the new pump header, and you can actually control the speed of the pump within the BIOS. It's really cool, and it's something that ASUS has added on their Z170 motherboards. Moving on to expansion slots, we have 2 USB 2.0 ports, DisplayPort, HDMI, VGA, DVI, a combination PS2 port, 2 USB 3.0 ports, a Intel powered Gigabit Ethernet port, a USB 3.1 port, and this is the Type A, and typically you'll see this green color labeled for the USB 3.1 Type A, and then we have a USB 3.1 Type C, and then finally you have your audio connections. So this wraps up our quick unboxing and overview of the ASUS Z170A motherboard. Now make sure you check back very soon on thinkcomputers.org, as we'll have our full written review, which goes into detail on all of the great features as well as benchmarks and all of that fun stuff. So until next time,